Okay, next up we have parametabolists, which is gradual metamorphosis. And so they do change shape, but not dramatically. So they change shape more than the Columbella do, which don't change shape at all. But they change shape gradually. They don't have a distinct larval and adult form like the hemimetabolists did. Each time they shed, it's called an instar. And so in this example, the nymphs, note this is where we use the word nymph, they have 5 different instars. And so in between each one of these, they're shedding their whole exoskeleton so they have room to grow. That exoskeleton is restrictive. So all of these insects, in order to grow, need to shed their exoskeleton so that they can get bigger. So again, we're here on parametabolists. There's only one order that is parametabolists, and that is the Hemiptera, also called the true bugs. And there are a lot of entomologists, so if you use the word bug, you're only allowed to use it for Hemiptera. If you use bug for any other kind of insect, they consider you to be incorrect. I'm not going to make a big deal out of it, but I just wanted to let you know in case you come across entomologists that really don't like it when you use bug for anything else. So in the Hemiptera, some of the adults and nymphs, or juveniles is another word you can use, are aquatic, for the ones that we're going to talk about. They have piercing, sucking mouth parts. That's what makes it a Hemiptera. You can see this here. Some people call it a beak, but this is a piercing, sucking mouth part. If it's got that, it's a Hemiptera. Almost all are predators, and they use this piercing mouth part to stab their prey, inject some digestive juices, and then once their prey's body insides are all broken down, they slurp it up like a smoothie. So they have prey smoothies. So that's kind of gross, but you know, that's what they do. They have their first pair of wings are modified with the basal portion thickened and leathery, and the distal portion is membranous. There are lots of different body shapes, and we'll go over some. There are 15 different families and 400 species that are aquatic. There are a lot that are terrestrial. This is not an aquatic only group. The families we go over will be all aquatic, but there are lots of terrestrial Hemiptera families. They're usually in still water, so ponds and lakes. They will bite you. These stabbing things do not feel good. So be careful if you pick them up with your hand. Some of them are less likely to bite you. There is one family that does not have a pointy mouth part that is not a predator, that is totally okay to pick up. But I just wanted to warn you if you're out checking out some different aquatic habitats. So bug parts, they have a triangle. Beetles also have one too. So this is the scutellum. You probably don't need to know most of these other terms. This is the beak is that mouth part, the piercing, sucking mouth part. And tarsi is a good insect term in general, and it's basically the feet. So these are some examples. I said they come in lots of different shapes. This is the one that does not have the pointy mouth parts. This is, we'll learn the family later on, but they have this rounded mouth, and that's for eating algae. But this order includes like the water striders that most people have probably seen before. These are water boatmen. These guys get freaking huge and will nail you, and you will bleed if these guys get you. I don't see very many of the huge ones, so you don't need to worry about it. It's not like a scary thing. It's like if you are using a net and you look in your net and you see one, then don't reach your hand in and just grab it because you're going to get nailed. This is a juvenile that doesn't have the wings. So you can see that this is an adult and this is the wing. So we said that there's a leathery part of the wing here, and then there's a membranous part of the wing here. And the same thing here on these guys and these guys. This is a juvenile, so it hasn't grown out its wings yet. It's got these kind of wing pads, but eventually the wings will cover up these abdominal, the abdomen segments. This is another one. It's called a water scorpion. It's actually, I've picked these up plenty of times. They've never bitten me. These are really cool. We'll talk more about them. But again, lots of different body shapes, which means it can be a little confusing to figure out if it's a hemipter or not. But except for that one I showed you with the rounded mouth parts, all the rest of them have pointy, sucking mouth parts. And so this is a giant water bug. Some of them get really big, like the size of my hand. There's another group that are smaller, that are more like the size of the length of my pinky finger or something. But these guys can take down fish and frogs and tadpoles, all kinds of things. Okay, the next type of metamorphosis we have is complete metamorphosis, so holometabolous. Think butterfly. This is not a butterfly, this is a caddisfly, but it has the same way to go. So that from eggs, they hatch into a larva, has no wings at all. It becomes a pupa, and then becomes an adult. So same thing with butterflies. They have a caterpillar, which is the larva, a pupa, which is a chrysalis, and then the adult butterfly. So in complete metamorphosis, they all have a pupal stage. That's what makes it different from hemimetabolous. So pupal stage, think like a cocoon. It doesn't last very long, so we're not going to learn the pupal stages, but do know that all of these groups have a pupal stage. And it's basically where they're transforming between the larva and the adult. It's where they're rearranging their whole body. It's totally crazy, and making wings so that they can live a totally different kind of life. Okay, so the first group, first order is called Megaloptera, and this is one you've probably never heard of unless you go fishing in streams or if you've already taken entomology. So this includes, the common names are Dobson flies, alder flies, and fish flies. We'll learn these are different families. It is an entirely aquatic order. They have chewing mouth parts. These are an adult Dobson fly. This is a male. These are kind of for show. They're not really like pinchers. And this is an alder fly, which looks kind of indescript. Their larvae look awesome. They have these chewing mouth parts. They have these crazy projections to help them increase their oxygen absorption. The adults have heavy looking wings that are held flat over their body. The adults are terrestrial. The larvae are called helgramites, which is kind of a fun word. And they have these flattened, elongated bodies and these pairs of gills. These are gills for absorbing oxygen. 2 families, 46 species in North America, lots of different habitats. I find these in ponds on a regular basis. They're pretty cool. So here's some more pictures of some different ones. But you can see they all have these gills on the side, and they look pretty robust, like they're not going to fall apart if you pick them up. And here's another picture of an adult, a male, because he's pretty showy and cool looking. All right, next up, Lepidoptera, which is moths. You probably did not know that there were aquatic moths. I don't come across them super regularly, but there are actually a lot of them. There aren't aquatic butterflies, but there are aquatic moths. There's 782 species in 6 families that have aquatic stages. Only a few are truly aquatic. All the adults are terrestrial. They're not in your field guide, so that might be a little bit confusing. But the key characteristic is they have feet like caterpillars do. These are these kind of fake legs, and they have little hooks all the way around. If you ever find a terrestrial caterpillar and turn them over, they'll have these little things on the bottom. So they really are moths. They have legs at the top, but then they have these like fake feet thing. They can be confusing. and you don't come across them very often. The first time I found one in a sample, I was definitely super confused. It took me forever to figure out what it was, just because I find so few of them. Next up is Trichoptera, and this forms the third order in EPT. So Ephemeroptera, Plecoptera, and Trichoptera are your top indicators of clean water. So if you've got Trichoptera, your water's probably doing pretty well. These are the caddisflies. They're the largest entirely aquatic order with 21 families and 1,400 species just in North America. So that's a lot. The adults are terrestrial. You can see here's one. They look kind of like a moth or a butterfly, but instead of having scales on their wings, they have little hairs on their wings. So some people refer to them as the hair-winged insects. Their legs are also hairy. They have slender, long, segmented antennae on the adult, and their wings are usually held at an angle that looks like a roof. So the two come together to kind of look like a roof shape. The larvae have distinct sclerotized head and pronotum. So their thorax is broken up into three sections: the pronotum, the mesonotum, and the metanotum in the head. But they have they're sclerotized, so that means they're hard on top for these. They have hooks at their end. They're called anal legs with hooks on the at the tip of their abdomen. And sometimes they have these gills. They don't always have gills though. And they live in houses called cases. So these Holometabolous groups all can make silk. And so they use silk to glue things together to make little houses. These are some examples of the houses. There are some families that have free-living larvae, but you can see here, these are rocks that they glued together with silk. Sometimes they take sticks and rocks and glue them together with silk. Here they cut out little pieces of grass into little rectangles and glued them together to make a case. And if you find these, it's really important to preserve the case and the larvae, because a lot of times the case is very helpful at identifying what kind of caddisfly you actually have. So here's some photographs. This is one made out of kind of grass that's been glued together with silk, and these are rocks glued together with silk. And you can see they're sticking their head out and their legs, and they'll crawl along the bottom, just carrying their houses with them. It's kind of funny looking, actually. So some of them do that. They'll crawl around with their cases. Some of them will glue their cases to the underside of a big rock or the underside of a log or something like that, and they'll stay put. And usually they'll do that where there's some flowing water so that oxygen is going over them on a regular basis. Here's some other ones. This is a really cool one that makes a spiral case that looks kind of like a snail.